I know I sound like a broken record, but the country of Niger, Africa is falling apart to the point where the US military is literally just on standby and waiting on a US base with restricted access to the country. We have a lot to cover in this video, so please stick with me. You have European countries who are pulling out of Niger, as well as economic support for Niger. You have Russia, who's looming in the background, who's willing to pay for African countries' debts, give free grain, and potentially swoop into Niger, Africa. Let's watch this video and see what's happening to the French embassy, though.
These chaotic scenes outside the French embassy are certain to deepen concern in the West. Supporters of the coup, which has been boosted by anti-French sentiment, lit fires and shouted their support for Vladimir Putin as they waved the Russian tricolor.
Now, there's been a lot of speculation out there that Russia was somehow involved with the coup in Niger, Africa. And people might be questioning, well, why is Niger going after the French? What did the French do? You have to understand that the French have a massive stake in Niger. They get their uranium from Niger to help with the nuclear program within France. So many people of Niger dislike France and pretty much call them colonizers, etc. That's what Russia is calling them. So that's why you're getting a lot of backlash and hate towards France. Also understand this, Mali fell apart and the people of Mali kicked France out, so we're starting to see a pattern of these countries just not liking France.
Was a fragile democracy, now appears to be heading towards full-blown military dictatorship, which could end up aligning itself with the Kremlin.
Now again, please stick with me in this video because there's a lot of layers to this story. We will get to why Russia has a big stake into Niger and how they are literally buying Africa and how Africa might become the next Soviet Union. Nonetheless, here's why the United States has a bit of concern in not working with or supporting Niger.
Could also have a profound impact on the global fight against terror. At this base, US forces were training the country's soldiers. For the Pentagon, Niger is a cornerstone in its fight against Islamic radicals in the region. The French, a former colonial power, also have bases in the country. What happens to the 1,500 troops stationed here remains an unanswered question.
Ultimately, the biggest reason why the US military or the United States is involved with Niger is to have a stake in the region of Africa where there is a massive presence of militant groups who are anti-West, anti-democracy, etc. And us being in Niger and us training the other forces, along with the French forces who are training Niger's military, it was a way to show a relationship, a way to show investing in the country, and a way to have a security presence within the country. However, to Niger, this meant nothing. That is actually why the coup happened. Now, here's the issue. The US military and the government is not calling this a coup. Under US law, we literally cannot help a country who is undergoing a coup or overthrown their government in a non-diplomatic way. So essentially, if we are working with your country, we give you a bunch of money, we're here to train the US military with you, and all of a sudden you overthrow the country, this is essentially what happens to you.
Let me be very, very clear about this, as I have been in my phone conversations. Our economic and security partnership with Niger, which is significant, hundreds of millions of dollars, depends on the continuation of the democratic governance and constitutional order that has been disrupted by the actions in the last few days. So that assistance, that support, is in clear jeopardy as a result of these actions, which is another reason why they need to be immediately reversed.
Now, I've seen a lot of dumb comments of people being like, hundreds of millions of dollars, that's nothing. The United States has way more money than that. You guys are missing the big picture. If a conflict happens with Niger, the US military will back them and they will be there for them, and vice versa. The money is just there as a sign of economic stability and a sign of we will work with you. The money means nothing. More so, the relationship means everything for the United States and the US military. And when things are falling apart and there is a coup via US law, we cannot help you anymore. Now, I might as well put this video in here too. The country of Chad, their president seems to be supporting this coup, which is not a good thing because the country of Chad is a major ally of the United States.
En marge du sommet extraordinaire de la CEDEAO consacré à la situation politique au Niger, le président de transition, président de la République du Tchad, le général Mohamed Idriss Déby Itno, a marqué un arrêt à Niamey, au pied de la ville.
Now, here is the absolute worst case scenario. You have Russia using tones of Soviet Union, working together, economic stability, everything that Africa needs, especially countries that are falling apart or who have fallen under a coup, which is like 7 countries in the past 10 years. Nonetheless, listen to what President Putin is saying and listen to how he's showing, look, maybe we can restart the Soviet Union, maybe we can do this in Africa.
But Vladimir Putin is hoping it will mark the beginning of Russia's new plan for Africa. He's seeking a bigger role, similar to that of the Soviet Union in the past century.
Many people here know that the Soviet Union and Russia never assumed that we should only buy raw materials from Africa. How many enterprises, power plants, steel factories did the Soviet Union build in Africa? We must return to this practice, as my colleague has just said, and we will do this both bilaterally and on international platforms.
One thing we have to understand from a lot of us who live in the West, or a lot of us who didn't live in a communist society, is that in Africa, this means nothing to them to hear the words of the Soviet Union and etc. It's not that they were ignorant to what the Soviet Union did, but the Soviet Union never really worked with Africa and never took Africa serious. And I try not to generalize Africa because we have so many different cultures, different foods, religions, etc. We are just generalizing Africa because that's what President Putin is saying. He is generalizing Africa and he's talking Soviet Union and he's almost gaslighting them and saying, look, we didn't take you guys serious, but now we are taking you serious. In fact, let me give you guys some free grain and let me give you guys some free money.
Putin says the global economic system is going through significant change.
The African continent is indeed becoming a new center of power. Its political and economic role is growing exponentially. Everyone will have to take this reality into account. For example, let's look at the initiative by a number of African states on solving the Ukraine crisis, which is an acute problem. We are not shying away from reviewing it. Previously, any mediation missions were monopolized exclusively by countries with so-called advanced democracies. Not anymore. Now, Africa is ready to help solve the problems that seem outside its primary interests. We treat your initiatives with respect and carefully study them.
Again, the irony of this statement is that when you look into every country that Russia seems to be working with or is aligned with in Africa, the countries either fall apart or become totally dependent on Russia for security assistance, for economic assistance, some sort of assistance to make sure nothing bad happens. And when you study the country of Mali, where that country fell apart and their militant groups were bleeding into Niger, and many people are saying in Niger, saying, we're falling apart because of Mali. That's why the United States and other people are saying, and when I say people, I even mean like the CIA, is that Russia could have a stake into the country of Niger, and this whole coup could be happening because of Russia's influence within Africa. So I'm sure a lot of you are asking, well, why should we care? The United States needs to pull out of Niger. Like, the United States should not care about Africa. Let's just get out of there. It's way deeper than that. It's a lot bigger than that. When you look at, again, the countries that Russia has aligned with in Africa, it's not out of the question that Russia could quite literally just conquer all of Russia or align themselves in a way economically or militarily where they can just all work together. The issue with this is that means Russia will literally be placed in the middle of the world, and NATO means nothing. The Ukrainian conflict. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are saying, well, what's the big issue? Let's pull out of Niger. Again, issue number one is that the U.S. military has invested a lot of money and assets in training that region of Africa and other African countries and militaries who come into Niger to train. We're talking the top training you can get, U.S. Special Forces, drone training, etc. And again, the presence of militant groups is in that region of Africa. And with the United States being smack dab in the middle, we can go out and sort of put our own presence within those militant groups and let them know the United States is here and we're here to fight. Nonetheless, with Russia's involvement, they probably will still be dealing with the same threats, but those countries now swear allegiance to Russia, and they could now potentially form a new Soviet Union within Africa. Now look, at the time of making this video, you have Italy and France evacuating their people out of the country of Niger. Something else to understand is that at the time of making this video, again, you have President Biden and his administration. They are not calling this a coup under any circumstances. They're just calling this like an uprising or an unfortunate situation. The issue is this: if they call it a coup, again, no money support and the military has to pull out, there's going to be a lot of issues in downfall, and then who's to say that the people of Niger will then not turn on an American embassy and so on. It can turn into a lot of other issues. So that is why right now the United States is not calling this a coup. Many people are questioning and throwing shade at the Biden administration, saying, hey, this is obviously a coup. The rest of the world knows this is a coup. By definition, this is a coup, an illegal uprising. What is happening? That is why they are not saying anything, just so you know. Anyway, that is currently what's happening right now. I don't think this is a good look for the U.S. military. I think eventually we'll have to pull out and reorganize or restation our troops, maybe in Chad or Djibouti. That's where we have another military base. I know a lot of you guys laugh at the name of the country, but that's what it's called. Nonetheless, this is a perfect case scenario for Russia, and unfortunately, again, for countries that align themselves with Russia, they seem to fall apart, or there seems to be even more issues. Just go ahead and look at the country of Mali. Anyway, not looking good for France, not looking good for Italy, not looking good for the United States. This is just a bad look overall. Violence is terrible, uprisings are terrible, but this is what happens when agreements are not made and when people are just pissed off. The country of Niger is just annoyed. They want better security, they want more help, and this is their way of doing it, unfortunately. The democratic process has not worked for them. Maybe we have to do some more digging and investigating as to why it didn't work out. But the main reason this all went down again was security reasons. The people of Niger just don't feel safe. And so I don't know what to say to that. That could be an issue across the board. Nonetheless, that's what's happening. Another country falling apart in Africa, another coup uprising, and another country who's probably just waiting for Russia to take over economically and with their military presence. That's what's happening. Leave your comments and opinions down below. We'll see you guys later.